All right, give you guys a couple seconds if you do not have your camera on to go ahead and get it turned on. And we are going to start. We are already into week 3, which is crazy if you think about it, because in 2 weeks, just two, it's going to be midterms already. But I don't want you to stress out. Both your study guides for this course and 210, I'm working on them. So you'll have them by next week. If for some reason, no, they'll be done by next week, as well as Quizlets for both. So you'll have those as additional resources. My goal is to get both of those to you guys by next week so that you'll have some good amount of time. To kind of look over it. Keep in mind they're only resources, okay? But we're already at week 3. So we have our quote of the week. We are looking at chapter 3, medical legal aspects of what we do, which is really important because we can be summoned to court, all right? We have some case studies that we're going to do together as a group. If we get to our poll questions, we have about 15 that are directly, you may see some concepts from your knowledge checks, your quiz, and even maybe from the midterm. But even if we don't get to it, you guys will still have access to that. And then we're going to wrap everything up with that. Chapter 3. Now, our quote of the week, okay? When you want to succeed as bad as you want to breathe, then you will be successful. As an ST, our role is extremely important. Don't let anyone tell you it's not. Success in this field isn't about just learning the skills, okay? You're going to get that, I promise you. But it's about having a deep drive to constantly improve. I want you to think of it like this. Just as you need air to breathe, you need a passion for what you do. When you approach your studies, your practice with that same urgency, giving anything less than your best is not an option, y'all. The kind of determination that's going to push you to be better each and every day, that's what leads to true success. Now, I want you to keep that fire burning. You're going to go far. I promise you. Not only for yourself, but I want you to think about for the patients whose lives you are definitely going to impact. I promise you. Now, our learning objectives. We're going to differentiate between law, standards of practice, and code of conduct because it's slightly different. We've got to talk about risk management. We're going to explain the difference between licensure, certification, and registration. I have actually seen questions on the CST about these, so kind of keep those in the back. Identify and discuss abuse, violation, especially in the perioperative environment. We're going to talk about Sentinel Event, and we're going to identify common areas of negligence in the perioperative practice. So we start with types of law. Now, laws are rules made by governments. They are to kind of guide our behavior. Now, in surgery, regulations and laws just make sure that we as STs follow safety protocols. We're keeping a safe, sterile environment, and we're communicating effectively in the operating room. These rules help define our duties and keeps our patients safe. We have to understand these laws because we are accountable. Again, we can be summoned to court, okay? We're also that advocate for a patient. You're going to hear me say that all the time in Module 2 and definitely in Module 3. We are the patient's advocate and we provide the best care. We are the subject matter experts on sterility. We are guided by both administrative and state laws that shape our responsibilities in and out of the operating room. Now, when we talk about laws, laws are the rules that kind of guide our behavior, especially in healthcare. And breaking them can lead to serious consequences. Now, some laws are widely known, okay? And that's because they impact our work and our patient care. The government makes sure that these laws are followed. Now, whether we agree with the law or not, violating it has consequences. State laws refers to laws created by the state legislator. We get into risk management. The aims are to prevent harm to patients, ourselves as staff, and visitors, but it focuses on a couple things: education, promoting safety, ensuring that there's compliance with safety protocols, staff training, reporting different policies, collaborating with our risk managers. All of these efforts help create a very safe, or safer, I should say, healthcare environment. Without them, it's kind of like that gray area that we don't want to be in. Now, when we get into certification, licensure, and accreditation, certification confirms that an individual has met the required standards of knowledge or performance. Licensure is a legal requirement set by state to regulate professionals and just make sure that they meet specific standards. We look at accreditation and that's saying that you have earned the skills that you have gone to school for. For us as STs, I always get usually, so whose license are we under, right? Surgical techs, we are what's called reciprocity, REP or RECIP, just in case you see it. This allows us to kind of work from one state. Now, if you get a license, let's say you're a nurse, okay, and you're a nurse in Texas, and you want to go become a nurse in California, then a lot of times you'll have to take another licensure test so that you can practice in that other state. For us, we are nationally certified, so we can work in all areas in America, okay? And we work underneath our nurse and our surgeon's licenses, all right? Now, we have to talk about types of work abuse. Ugh. So we look at some of the ones that the chapter talks about. Okay. So you see if they're bullying, repeated aggressive behavior towards a coworker, like yelling or even spreading rumors. When we talk about hazing, we're looking at harassment or initiation rituals that can actually be very humiliating, harmful, often aimed at new employees. When we look at unwanted advances or comments of sexual nature that create a hostile working environment, we're referring to sexual harassment, and disruptive behavior, actions that just interfere with the work of others, like constant arguing or being overly loud. Now, the chapter also talks about effects of workplace abuse. Think about it. If someone's constantly being bullied, there's going to be a decreased morale. You're not going to want to be there. You're going to feel unhappy or maybe even anxious. We're already in a stressful working environment, right? Now you put on someone hazing you. That's increased stress. Abuse can lead to mental health issues and even burnout, where you're just like, I can't deal with this anymore. You may not want to be as productive. Like, who wants to be in an environment where they're constantly feeling stress or anxiety? And you'll notice that those particular facilities may have a higher rate of turnover. So, we also look at prevention in this chapter, promoting a respectful culture. You're encouraging kindness, support among coworkers. There's training, there's workshops, recognizing and preventing workplace abuse, and there's clear policies in place where everyone knows the rules against abuse and how to report it. And you support the victim. You're trying to create a safe space for employees to discuss their experiences and actually seek help, which is big. Okay. Now, I feel it's important for us to see the other side of Sentinel events before we kind of break them down. For us, of course, we're in the operating room and we'll know what's happening at that moment, right? But I like to take it a step further, kind of bring the person into it. So, about a year and a half ago, NBC shared a story, and well, let's just take a look. If I can get it to play. See if I can get it to play.
Our lives changed forever at that moment.
Losing her child in 2002 led Lenore Alexander to change her life and to become a patient advocate. Her 11-year-old daughter, Leah, was admitted to a Los Angeles hospital for elective surgery to repair a chest deformity. Following surgery, she says Leah's condition spiraled.
And I kept telling them she was in a lot of pain.
Lenore says she fell asleep next to Leah's hospital bed. When she woke up,
I looked at her. I knew that that wasn't Leah, that was a body. And I screamed.
What was the cause of death?
They put cause of death unknown.
But Lenore blames what she says were mistakes made in the hospital. And an autopsy report shows an epidural catheter was found in tissue in Leah's chest wall, not in epidural space. The hospital told NBC News it was unable to discuss the case due to privacy laws. Patient safety is an issue highlighted in a new study examining patient data from 2018 that found nearly 25% of patients hospitalized experience an adverse event. Nearly a third of those events considered serious and more than a fifth of them preventable, many due to error involving things like medication or surgery. And the study's authors worry with the pandemic.
There are reasons to think that it could even be worse because we have so many issues today.
To help keep yourself safe in the hospital, experts say ask questions, know what medication you should be taking, and bring a family member or friend.
It's so easy to teach people basic patient safety, and nobody really thinks they need it until they need it.
Erin McLaughlin, NBC News, Agora Hills, California.
All right.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.
Okay. So the particular procedure that they're talking about is it's a NUS procedure. So a lot of times children are coming, not some even adults, well, they'll have the concave chest. And what we normally do is we'll put what's called a nest bar across their chest. Okay, so we'll make 2 incisions. You'll have 2 setups, same tech, like you're the same tech, but you'll have 2 sets of everything. So you'll have METs on one side, METs on the other, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, and we take the bar, we have a scope, and we're looking, and a lot of times we are the ones holding the camera. Yes, that's what we're doing. Pectoris I always say a NUS procedure, but Lizette said it exactly. That is the procedure what we do. And there's a certain part of the procedure where we take the bar itself from one side of the chest cavity over the lungs. We're visually looking at the lungs over the heart to the other side, and we kind of place it in, put it in place. Now, when we talk about sentinel events, okay, these are also known as adverse events. They are synonymous. You may see a concept where it's asking about an adverse event. Keep in mind, sentinel event. Serious patient safety, and it's defined by the Joint Commission as death, permanent harm, severe temporary harm that requires intervention just to sustain life. Now, sentinel events must be documented. They're going to be reported to hospital administration. All of this information is going to be important for risk assessment so that it doesn't happen in the future and help to identify areas for improvement in patient safety. Now, there is the ECRI Institute. It's the leading authority on patient safety. They are going to be the ones that collect, they're going to be analyzing this information. They publish reports that serve as just resources for us and other individuals in the perioperative profession to kind of learn from. Okay. Now, don't be afraid of these particular cases. It's just one that you have to be adamant. Now, we're not saying that one reason or another is why this happened, but it's really important for us to kind of have that empathy, because when it comes to a sentinel event, you have to look at the time frame. It may not even be immediately after, right? It could be up to 48 hours, 72 hours after an actual case. So we keep these things in mind. Now, with that, we have what's called common areas of negligence. Now, keep in mind, we are in a very stressful environment as it is, okay? Very stressful environment. Now, we're going to discuss how we can be involved in just preventing common areas of negligence in the perioperative environment. So, the very first picture in front of you is a unintended retained item. Okay, if you look in the corner right here, there is probably a sponge, okay, most likely inside of our patient. Now, keep in mind that we're going to make sure all instruments, sponges are accountable. We're going to show you that in module 3 before and after the procedure to avoid leaving foreign objects inside of a patient. But here we are, and in front of you is a retained object. And the only reason we can see it is because there's some type of radiopaque. You're gonna learn that in module 3 as well, to let us know that, hey, this is not normal. So why do you think, or how could this have happened? What do you guys think? And there are no wrong answers. We're all just kind of like figuring this out together. Was not counted for after procedure, not keeping account. They just forgot. This could happen, especially in longer cases when you have multiple turnovers. Okay. So let's say me and Lizette, you're in front of me. Okay. I'm not picking at you, but you're in front of me. Okay. Me and her in a case. So she started the case. Okay. And she's got to go on a break. She's got to eat. So I am her relief. So there's one turnover. But me and my nurse didn't relieve at the same time. We tried to in the operating room, and you'll notice that. But sometimes things just don't work out that way. Maybe the nurse that was going to relieve that circulator first couldn't do it, so or was later. But I'm going to go relieve her. So her and I'll do a count with the current nurse. Then the other nurse comes to relieve the Lizette's nurse or circulator. Okay. So then I'm going to do another count with that individual. So that's already 2 counts. Okay. Not including the count in the beginning. So we're still going. Lizette comes back from her lunch. So again, another count's done. Okay. With the relief circulator. But then her circulator comes back as well. Now, again, this is a long case. Let's say 12 hours. Think about how many times of change that you get. So in the normal area, you have a morning break, lunch, an evening break. For a 12-hour case, there's going to be a whole nother shift change as well. So distractions is another one. So thinking they just forgot about it is going to be a little bit harder because there's so many individuals in the room. Now, another thing that could happen, let's say it was misplaced, like it was counted or something else was counted in its place by mistake, right? It could happen to err as human. Okay. Other things that can happen in the operating room. We look at burns. It's important to think about our heat sources. Cautery devices that you guys are going to learn about. We have electrical knives, so to speak. They're used, we have to use them safely. And it's really important because we want to protect our patients from burns during surgery. Not something that normally happens, but it's good to know that it could potentially happen. One that doesn't normally happen often, wrong site. So with the timeout, we try to make sure we cut down on that. So we're not like having a bunch of patients going in for a left arm coming out with a left amputee, right? We don't do that. But what they do is the surgeon themselves will mark it just to make sure that, it is indeed the right site. We have medications. That's a big one. Not necessarily in the operating room, but not saying it can't happen. We pass medications to our surgeon. Okay. So we have to be very adamant on trusting and verifying, right? Patient, that's going to be easy because we have gone through the timeout. We know, but we're also going to be looking at, is it the right medication? On your back table, you could have 4 or 5 clear medications, all different types, from normal saline, from heparin, from Marcaine, bupivacaine, same as Marcaine, without epi 100,000 or epi 1 to 100,000. Okay. So for that part, we still have to make sure that we are really being adamant about what we're doing. And again, we having to be present. I like how someone said, Demetria said distractions. We have to be present. The good thing is, you are going to be such an amazing multitasker. Trust me. You're going to be able to look at your back table, make sure nobody's touching your back table, looking at your mail stand, anticipating your surgeon, knowing who is coming in and out of your room. I promise you. Okay. And communication, clear communication with the team is so important, particularly regarding patient safety, equipment needs, and any concerns that may even arise during surgery. All right, now that was the first half. For the second half, we got to talk about documentation. Informed consent is big. We got to look at adverse events, perioperative environment, examples more of just negligence that occurs, legal documentation, and kind of give examples of advanced care directives. So let's talk about documentation. We know that if it's not in black and white, it didn't happen. It is required by standards. The Joint Commission sets these standards because to make sure that everything is accurate and complete. Now, HIPAA, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, protects patients and confidentiality. Proper documentation not only meets these standards, but also improves patient safety and care quality. Now, how does accurate documentation in our setting contribute to patient safety and our personal legal protection? What do you guys think? So let's say we did get called into court. And we're saying, no, 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 we did do a final count. But when they pulled our operative report, were distracted for whatever reason. And even though we say we did it, the final count was not documented. What could happen? We go back to our very first picture, and there is a foreign object, a sponge, left inside of the body. It helps us to recall to what happened leading to those events, most definitely. Do you think we could be held liable? Yes, most definitely. Because even though we say we did it, and in our mind we know we did it, if it's not in black and white, they can easily say it wasn't done. So here are common types of documentation that we may work with. Okay. Um, so this is a great question. They take the license away. This is going to really be dependent on the situation, pretty much a case by case basis. Now, remember, everything rolls downhill, right? Because remember, we work under the licensure of. So it could just make it a little bit tougher moving forward. But that is a great kind of thing to think about. Now, in the operating room, we have hybrid records, okay, meaning we have some on the computer and we do still have paper records. So, your patient record, okay, most of that's going to be on the computer, contains like all the health history and treatment details. Now, the informed consent, we usually have a paper record, depending on your facility. Some may have gone all digitized. At the Children's Hospital, we do still have both. And that's just proof that the patient actually understands and agrees to whatever procedure we're doing. There's the anesthesia record, same, could be hybrid. It could be, you know, they could be a fancy facility, everything's on the computer, or more of the surgery centers, the one that we worked at, we still had paper. Okay. Patient charges, again, could be either. At the Children's Hospital, patient charges is usually on the computer because it's just faster and easier. Every operating room that we have has a computer console in it. Birth, death certificate, specimen and pathology records are usually paper, depending again on the facility. So it's just good to kind of understand your particular facility and what they have. Now, informed consent is big. This is the legal document signed before surgery. And this just shows that, okay, our patient knows exactly what is going to happen. We talk about the types of surgery, describes the surgery in both medical and simple terms. Also, the risks, the benefits, outcomes. There's alternatives, offers other possible options besides the surgery. And then they have a patient understanding area where it confirms that this patient definitely understands what's going on. And then there's the acceptance where they sign. So it shows that the patient did agree to go forward with the surgery. True story. I had at the surgery center, I was working with the owner of the surgery center, and we were scheduled to do a shoulder scope. The patient was only consented for a shoulder scope. That was it, just to see what was going on. The surgeon suspected that there may be a rotator or labral tear. Where it was kind of iffy. When we got in, we noticed that it was a rotator cuff tear. We could not do the repair at that time. Why do you think so? Why do you think so? Why do you think we could not do the repair at that time? Correct. There was no consent. So once the patient, you know, was extubated, alert and oriented, then they spoke about different things they could do, and the patient was eventually scheduled for the rotator cuff repair. Now, some surgeons will do both. They'll say we're going in for, let's say, a shoulder scope where we just go in and look. And if there needs to be repair, A plus B plus C, do you consent? So some do it all that way. So, no risk and benefits explained for the repair. That part as well, because that's really big. The patient has to know all the risks. And so, you have some surgeons that kind of play it safe, like the owner that I worked with. And then you have some that's like, we're going to consent you to everything. Here is everything on the list. This is everything that could happen. So, again, it could be from where they were trained, what they're comfortable with. So, keep that in mind. Because even and when I was in the case, I was like, why weren't we just going to do it? Right. And they weren't consented for it. And I'm like, why didn't we have them consent for everything? But that was just the way that he liked to do things. And so you go with the flow. We also look at, when we talk about sentinel events, the biggest thing is we look at what happened. Did it cause injury, harm, or death, or one in which there was a near miss of any of those events? And we try to report this. You may see a concept. When should you report an incident? Immediately. Okay. And since I would feel like that would be better to do it all at one time too, right? But again, we kind of, as a tech, we kind of go with the flow. And me being this A type, I was like, what? And then you kind of like, okay, go with the flow. This is how they roll with their thing. So you learn. But yeah, same. So we try to develop. So let's say something does happen. And the biggest thing is this is not to point the finger. Okay. It's just to kind of help to see what happened so that we can prevent it moving forward. It helps to identify areas just for that. We're trying to improve. We're trying to make sure that there's some type of safety protocols that are upheld in our environment. So there's some guidelines, like when we submit the report right after event, immediately after, or as soon as we can, because sometimes we're in a case and we have to kind of like keep everything, and then as soon as it's done, you start writing. We talk about facts only, no opinions. Okay. We always use professional language. We use first person. Don't become intimidated. I know that sounds easier said than done, but don't. Everyone puts on their pants the same way, okay? And take your time. As it says, you're going to submit it to the OR director. And the biggest thing to keep in mind is when you see subpoenaed, just know this could be pulled for a court of law where I would have to speak. So you want to make sure that you are writing down everything that you can. Again, if it's not in black and white, it didn't happen. Even if it did, if they're looking at it's not black and white, it didn't. We talk about negligence. Okay. Now, these usually get confused. And so that's why I have this particular slide broken down like this so that you can kind of see and be able to differentiate it if you see these concepts. Okay. We look at actions resulting in harm. Harm can be physical, like an injury, psychological, like stress. Okay. We need to avoid causing harm, because we're trying to uphold ethical and legal standards. So we look at negligence tort. When someone fails to act as a responsible person would, that leads to harm. Here's an example, going back to that very first slide. Forgetting to count sponges, leaving one inside of the patient. Okay, that's negligent tort, which is different from intentional tort. When someone deliberately causes harm, example would be administering the wrong medication on purpose, harming the patient. And then we get into medical malpractice, when a healthcare professional just isn't meeting standards or they don't have the skills, and that causes harm. An example would be a surgeon performing surgery without proper training, like they saw it on YouTube and was like, I got this. And then there's a complication. Now, actions which result in physical or psychological harm or injury to another. Again, make sure you're able to differentiate negligent tort, intentional tort. I usually see those get not like mixed up a little bit. So just make sure you're able to differentiate the two. So with the HIPAA or Health Privacy Act, we have a couple identifiers that are not shared. Now, they include what you see up there, but they're not limited to just those. Medical records, fax numbers, emails, health plan beneficiaries, account numbers, vehicle identifiers, and serial numbers. Even the license plate number are Health Privacy Act identifiers. Okay, so it's more than just what you see up there. This is big. Okay, now again, it's good for us to kind of know these abbreviations. They have a list that must not be used because they can be misread or misinterpreted. There's general guidelines, okay? Every document has to include the patient's unique identifier, right? The date must be accurate. We correct errors by marking a line, has to be legible. We use brief, exact wording, correct language and spelling. We always log off computers, okay? You're going to be given access to a computer when you get to your site. You'll have your own identifying information so that you can check your email. We have online training. Make sure you don't share your passwords. And then documentation has to include some type of signature. Now, if you have the opportunity, make sure you are looking at table 3.2, okay? It's going to have a list of different patient identifiers and information that you may see coming up. Now, this is an easy question. Can you complete anyone else's documentation for them? Right. No, I figured that was a pretty easy one. No, we cannot. Now, hospitals and healthcare facilities are accredited by the Joint Commission. They have standards and policies that are required to maintain an accreditation. So there's like orientation training is required for new employees, and any violation of hospital policy may result in any type of disciplinary action. And keep in mind that the operating room procedure manual describes protocols for specific practices, but make sure you know the one for your facility. Now, once you get to your facility, your preceptors are going to help you. And once you graduate, because I'm speaking this into fruition, once you graduate and get into your first hospital, make sure that your preceptor kind of goes over that with you as well. They usually do, but if you can remember, just say, hey, I want to make sure I have all the protocols for this particular facility, because it does change from facility to facility slightly. And the reason being is some facilities do not have all the services. At the Children's Hospital, we have all the services from general, ortho, it's a pediatrics hospital. So plastics, OBGYN, urology. At the surgery center, we only had orthopedics, general, and neuro. So of course, the policies are going to be slightly different. Now, the chapter talks about professional standards and practices. Make sure you kind of understand the different organizations, okay? Now, I'm going to touch on evidence-based practice. These are decisions based on the best up-to-date research and facts. For example, if research shows that using a specific type of disinfectant reduces infections, we should be following that research and use that particular disinfection in the operating room. Again, your senior techs and everyone is going to make sure that's in place. Okay. And the position statement down here. Okay. This is an official statement or opinion from a professional organization about a certain topic. For example, I our organization may issue a position statement saying that all techs should receive specific training on new equipment or ensure patient safety. Now, all of these terms about using reliable information is to improve patient care and safety. Now, these are guidelines when we talk about the code of conduct. They're not laws. I repeat, they're guidelines. So violating them doesn't necessarily have legal consequences, but may lead to disciplinary action by the organization. The purpose is written rules for us as professionals so that we can follow. Its focus is recommending behavior based on honesty, professionalism, compassion, integrity. Okay. But there are some times where there's disruptive behavior in the operating room, unfortunately, just with anything. We look at the hierarchy, which can be intimidating for some. The OR often has strict chain of command where surgeons or senior staff hold more authority, which can make others like us as techs hesitant to speak up when necessary. But I encourage you to not let that deter you because at the end of the day, we are the patient advocate. They also talk about strict leadership. Some leaders use a controlling approach, like micromanagement, which can create stress, of course, fear, and tension, potentially leading to conflict or even aggressive behaviors. And accepting abuse. Negative behaviors like yelling or bullying may become normal if not addressed. So that leads to a toxic environment. All of these issues can harm teamwork, patient care. So I encourage you guys to make sure that you're not only advocating for the patient, but you're advocating for yourselves as well. Okay. That is extremely important. So we have some advanced healthcare directives. We have the DNR, a legal order stating that patients doesn't want CPR or any type of life-saving measures if their heart stops. Some of you may be part of the organ team. You could be on the donor team or the recipient team. Okay. But patients may choose to donate organs after death. We may help with organ recovery and procedures. And I will tell you, it is one of the most humbling cases that I personally have ever done. I was on the donor side. So, puts it in a different perspective. Some patients don't want blood. They decline transfusions or tissue products for personal or even religious reasons. So we as a team, we have to respect this and use like alternatives during surgery. And then there's the medical power of attorney. It's a legal document allowing someone to actually make medical decisions for the patient if they cannot for whatever reason. So we're going to follow the decisions of this particular representative. All right. So when we talk about alternative blood, that is good. That's a great question. Now, that is going to really depend on what the facility has. I personally have not had a case where that was an option, but other facilities may, instead of giving blood, they may kind of like hold off. All the cases that I have seen or been around, keep in mind, I haven't been in those cases. It was more of a what we have to hold off because the patient not only didn't want blood, they didn't want blood products either, which makes it even tougher because you're talking about platelets, you're talking about everything else. I'm actually going to look that up as we guys get ready to do our case study and come back to see because I haven't had the experience of an alternative blood, but that is a great question. So as I'm looking this up, we're going to be looking at two cases really quick. Okay. We're in the locker room. We notice that one of our coworkers is emptying their pockets of their scrub suit. There are two vials of injectable medications. We cannot see what they are. She puts them in her purse and leaves. What do we do? What do we do? Exactly. We're going to report it because we're not trying to be around Nurse Jackie, right? Like, absolutely not. That's not happening. Talk to her first. We could talk to her first. We could. But let's say she makes up a story and unknown to us, she has been taking these medications for a while, right? But yeah, document and report as well. So all of those are great points. Especially talking, especially if you're their friend, then maybe you can kind of be like, hey, what are you doing? Next question. While scrubbed on a case involving surgical treatment of a carpal tunnel syndrome, and those are really fast cases, you complete the instrument, sponge, and needle count. You're missing a needle. This can happen. You tell the surgeon that the count is incorrect. He replies, don't worry. The needle can't be in the wound. It's too small. I would be able to see it. Let's close. What will you do? We report it. We do report it. We do report it. And worst case scenario, once usually what will happen is if a case like this happens and we cannot find the needle, we tell our circulator, and the circulator is going to order an x-ray so that it's on the record. Because remember, everything we do in the operating room is recordable and it can be subpoenaed. Okay. Again, not to scare you guys. I just want y'all to be aware. All right. So we'll tell the doctor, hey, we still got to do an x-ray because we want to just at least make sure that that needle is not in there. I understand that it's small. You may not be able to see it, but you know, we still got to do it. Now, two things can happen. The surgeon can say, no, we're good, or they'll say, fine, bring x-ray in. Okay. But either way, we've documented and we've done everything like crossed our T's, dot our I's. Okay. Now, besides the two questions that I'm going to be looking up, any other questions do you have for me before we get into our poll questions? Any questions? Okay. Now, for those of you who are watching, you're going to have the same opportunity as the ones here. I will put the poll link in that archive section so you'll be able to see the questions. For everyone that's here, there are 15 questions, okay? Two choices. The two choices are the ones that are highly picked. One is correct, and one is the one that is usually I'd say the trigger, the one that gets picked if it's not the correct answer, okay? You guys will have 7 minutes, but if you guys get done faster, then we'll bring back and I'll have those answers to those questions. So take your time, okay, within 7 minutes. Don't second guess because you know it. And I'll be back. And we're about 88%. I know we still have about a minute left to go, you guys. Now, since most of you guys are back, I went up and I will share my references with you guys what I looked up. The first question that I got about the alternative to blood. Okay. Now, let's say the patient's going to refuse their blood. Now, they can use their own blood if that's a possibility. So Cell Saver will come in, especially in our heart cases, and it collects and returns their own blood during surgery. So it's not like they're receiving any other blood, but their own back. So usually what's happened is a blood drawn is done before incision and then replaced like after surgery, so they can kind of like get as much as they can, and then they'll have it in, like backup. There's also something that we do normally where it's prevention of blood loss. So medicines like TXA, which is just a medicine to help the blood clot, is another option that I looked up. There is trying to build up the patient's blood before surgery. If I can stop that. Like giving them iron boost, red blood cell production. Now, keep in mind, this is an ideal situation where they know they're going to surgery and they know that this is not what they want. Okay. We do have saline, albumin to keep the pressure up, but keep in mind that those things do not carry oxygen. The biggest thing is we have to always honor whatever they choose to or not choose to want, which is kind of sometimes hard for us, especially because our goal is to kind of save everybody, right? Like in the operating room, that's our goal we're with these patients at their worst times. The other question that was brought up or point that was brought up was about pre-surgery hemoglobin levels. Now, if it's low, tissues aren't going to be able to heal well, and then the heart has to kind of like work even harder. So the general rule is that we want it to be at least 10 globin or higher before any type of elective surgery. So that's why a lot of times you'll get your blood drawn, or not sometimes, all the times. Healthier patients may be okay around the 7 to 8. But again, that's going to be the doctor's call. I want you to think of it, when I was looking it up, to kind of think of it as fuel gauge for oxygen. So like in your car, you have a fuel gauge, or your car, you have your fuel gauge, right? Like once your tank is full, you're golden, and as it goes down, right, you kind of get into the danger zone. Now, surgery is definitely going to burn a lot of oxygen fuel, so that's why we don't want to have it empty. So as you guys are doing your test, I got the information from the American Society of Anesthesiologists, or ASA, and the World Health Organization. Both of those have a lot of good information if you wanted to kind of dive in deeper. Those are the references that I used. Okay. Okay. So for those of you that are watching the archive, what are the causes of negligence in the operating room? What is informed consent? And why is informed consent so necessary? You are welcome. A quote of the week: when you want to succeed as bad as you want to breathe, then you will be successful. So today was all about the law, right? We looked at standards of practice, codes of conduct. We looked at risk management, Sentinel Event. Keep in mind, you really want to make sure you're diving in the book to get just a little bit deeper on licensing, certification, and registration, and accreditation. We looked at abuse, violence, negligence, but I cannot stress, I want you guys to be advocates not only for your patients, but for yourselves. Trust me, that is going to really help you in your field. Again, before we get out of here, what questions do you have for me? Any other questions? No other questions? All right. We're at the top of week 3. We are moving fast. You guys are doing great. Stay engaged. 2 weeks will be at our midterm, and then it's going to fly by. With that, you guys have a wonderful rest of your evening, and I look forward to seeing everyone who can attend tomorrow's live session. Good night,
Sorry,
everybody.
Miss Teresa.
I see someone. Hold on. Yes.
It's Alenicia. I'm sorry.
Oh,
I had a question, but I don't know if I could ask her when it's microbiology class. It's for my micro class.
yeah, you can
I
always.
did send you an email.
Let me stop the recording, and
Okay.
hold on.